Hi everyone, welcome back to 6 Feet Apart. This week, our Community Arts Program Manager, Arista Alanis, has recorded an interview with Ross Gay. Ross Gay was a past visiting writer here at VSC, and he's a well-regarded poet and memoirist with an upcoming book called Beholding. Arista and Ross have been friends for a really long time. When Ross came here as a visiting writer, they would hang out in the studio together and paint. Ross also used one of her paintings on his award-winning poetry collection, Catalog of Unabashed Gratitude. Here we go.
High five! Oh my gosh.
How are you?
Ross has been a visiting artist here many times, and actually you were a resident in March of 2014 when I had the opportunity to meet you.
That's
And
right.
then we've been very fortunate to actually see each other every couple of years, and we have a collaboration going on through the years. We collaborate together with your poetry and my painting. We find a way to combine the two, and we usually have like a 10-hour day together. You know, we always get what we ask for, just not how we imagined it. And so here we are on our schedule 2 years later, collaborating in this virtual interview through a pandemic. Thank my lucky stars. I do have 3 questions to go on. As I was mentioning, you're a poet here, and look at here. So I don't have the first one. Is that one? And then I have the Catalog of Unabashed Gratitude. Look at there.
That one.
Here's the one without the stickers.
That's a nice cover.
And then the Book of Delights.
Yeah.
And then later on, I'll be talking about hopefully your new book, Beholding, which will be coming out in September 2020 by Pitts Press.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah. You
Excellent.
should. Don't you think you should say that the cover of Catalog of Unabashed Gratitude by Arista Alanis? And then the best thing about that is that besides the painting is so beautiful, everyone, including my mother, is like, "Whoa, you know, you've had nice covers, but this is the best cover." And I'm like, "Well, that's the only one I didn't paint."
Also, I wanted to say in the beginning that you call me Tia Ari.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to let our viewers know, if you end up shouting out Ari or Tia Ari,
Okay.
that early on you learned that my family calls me Ari.
Yeah.
And you asked if you could call me Tia Ari, like my 3 nieces and nephew. And you actually wrote about it in number 12. You wrote it on September 26th in your Book of Delights.
Yes.
You wrote about nicknames.
Yes.
So I was like, oh, so I'm honored. Maybe I should let you talk for a moment before I ask my questions.
Well, I'm just so glad to be with you. It feels actually like we're together, which feels really lucky.
I was thinking about you when I work here at the kitchen table with watercolors and gouache and ink, and how I've created a new ritual, a new studio practice. And I know a big studio practice for you is you like to write in coffee shops.
Yeah.
You like to go out in public.
That's
And
right.
I wanted to ask, how have you worked around that? And
It's so interesting you said that, because I haven't put these things together that I'm going to put together right now because of your question. I've been finding myself like wanting to do little collaborations with folks, like whether it's people students that I'm working on stuff with, and we're kind of working on, I'm with a couple students who I'm studying with. We're doing a little collaborative thing, or this other piece that I've been working on with another one of my students, or with some friends. Like, I have found that I've been a little bit more inclined to do collaborative stuff, and I wonder if part of that is because it's a way of sort of being in public, being social, making stuff. It's definitely a way of like being with people, as opposed to being in solitude, which is, I like to collaborate, period. But I have found myself even more drawn to like working, with folks. Yeah.
You've been able to focus on that more. Because
Yeah.
you've always liked to collaborate with individuals.
Yeah. But for a spell there, I felt like the only way that I could write was if I was writing with someone, you know.
Since we've been in quarantine, the
Yeah,
pandemic.
right when things shut down, I was immediately feeling like what I want to do is to make stuff with other people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Your connection.
Yeah.
May I have you read?
Oh yeah. Totally.
I was hoping you would read number 9, The High Five from Strangers.
Yeah. Okay. The high five from strangers, etc. Today I was wandering the square of the small Indiana town where I gave a poetry reading at the local college. A feature of the small town Midwest. A city hallish building in the center, always with some sad statue trumpeting one war or another. This one had a guy in one of those not very protective looking hats they called a helmet during World War I. He's carrying, naturally, a gun. Jenna Osman's book, Public Figures, alerted me to the ubiquity of the gun, the weapon, in the hands of our statues. A delight I wish to now imagine and even impose, given that beneficent dictatorship of one's own life anyway, is a delight. All new statues must have in their hands flowers, or shovels, or babies, or seedlings, or chinchillas. We could go on like this for a while. But never again, never ever guns. I decree it, and also decree the removal of the already extant guns. Let the emptiness our war heroes carry be the metaphor for a while. As I was finishing circling the square, I passed a storefront garage with huge Make America Great Again signs. It was a foreign auto repair shop, and inside were mostly Toyotas and Hondas. I settled into the coffee shop, took my notebooks out, and I was reading over these delights, transcribing them into my computer. And while I was working, headphones on, swaying to the new De La Soul record, Delight, which deserves its own entry, I noticed a white girl. She looked 15, but could have been, I suppose, a college student, standing next to me with her hand raised. I looked up, confused, and pulled my headphones back, and she said, like a coach or something, "Working on your paper? Good job to you, high five." And you better believe I high-fived that child in her pre-ripped Def Leppard shirt and her itty-bitty Doc Martens. For I delight in unequivocally pleasant public physical interactions with strangers. What constitutes pleasant, it's no secret, is informed by my largish male and cisgender body. A body that is also largish, male, cisgender, and not white. In other words, the pleasant, the delightful are not universal. We should all understand this by now. A few months ago, walking down the street in Umbertide, in Italy, a trash truck pulled up beside me and the guy in the passenger seat yelled something I didn't understand. I said, "Como?" The Spanish word for come again, which is a ridiculous thing to say because even if he had come again, I would not have understood him. He knew this, and hopping out of the truck to dump in a couple cans, he flexed his muscles, pointed at me, and smacked my biceps hard. Twice. I loved him. Or when a waitress puts her hand on my shoulder, forget it if she calls me honey, baby even better. Or someone scooting by puts their hand on my back. The handshake, the hug, I love them both. Once I was getting on a plane and shuffling down the aisle, I saw, sitting at the front of coach, reading a magazine, my great Uncle Earl. I got down on my knees and put my hand on his forearm and I said, "Uncle Earl, it's me, Ross." He looked at me kind of quizzically, as did the woman traveling with him, who did not look one bit like my Aunt Sylvia, which made me look back at my not Uncle Earl, who looked maybe like my Uncle Earl's second cousin 20 years ago. And though it was benign and no one was hurt, it was a little weird, and they looked confused. All the same, given his Uncle Earl died about 6 months later, I'm delighted I got to see him and touch him gently, lovingly, about 1,000 miles away.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, that's something. Hugs, no high fives, no that touch on the shoulder right now. I was going to mention how we have that in common. We both like to hug
Yeah,
people,
I know.
And
That's one of the things when I go through and reread this book, I'm like, whoa, so much touch, so much proximity, so much being in in common space or ways that people are making space common. You know, like, yeah, like if we were with each other, we'd be constantly, you know, of course, then touching and like, you know, poking each other and
Right, right.
just contact, like that way of, yeah, being together.
And now, you know, I'm out on my walks and you see somebody come in and we both drift away.
I know.
You know, I've been thinking about joy and delight a lot. Beholding, which will come out in September 2016. And by the way, that's a beautiful black and white photo with the three individuals. And it's so very descriptive, very visual, a lot of details in that book cover. And before I ask you about beholding, I wanted to say how, even though I'm a visual artist and you're a poet, and how we have stuff in common, a lot about how our process creating is kind of similar, though you use words and I use visual elements. I should let the viewer know you did study painting when you were on a football scholarship at Lafayette. So I do let you paint and draw when we collaborate. It's not just words. But with our artwork, your poetry is, you're able to really grab the viewer, very descriptive, visually descriptive through your gardening, through those interactions with people. You're able to invite us in, but then you're able to really touch on some really hard emotions and then carry us out. So by the end, we may be smiling. And I always strive for that in my paintings.
Yeah, and I think it's like some of the funnest stuff, collaboration that we've done. Yeah, like when we're actually at this, more or less at the same time, kind of making marks on the same images.
Yeah.
And I always, when I talk about it, I'm like, you know, every once in a while I'll make a real good mark, but a lot of times I'm making marks and you're kind of like, all right, fix that a little bit. Going in it. But it's so much a kind of like, it's a visual correspondence, you know. It feels like it's a visual conversation. But I like what you're saying about the images, because of course, like all the time I'm thinking about how things look, like really hard. I like to think about how things look. And so often when I'm writing something, I'll actually be drawing a picture of the thing. So I can, like, I'll stop and I'll draw a picture of the thing to try to figure out what it actually looks like. Because, you know, sometimes you might know what a thing looks like, but you don't know, but you know it differently once you've drawn it, or once you put all the shapes that are in that thing together. And in me, like my sort of simile mind or metaphor mind, like then, I can see that these parts of the flower look like raindrops, or I can tell that these parts of the flower look like, you know, whatever. But yeah, it's very visual. It's very visual.
And you draw us in that way. And when you start off writing, you don't always know where it's going to lead you, do you?
You know, when I feel like I'm writing something that I'm going to be interested in, it's coming from a question, or I think it's always coming from a question, and I don't know what's going to happen. So those essays, you know, which I remember being there when I was reading them from before the book came out, when I was still in, and it was so fun and I would write those, I would draft them in 30 minutes. So I would just be like, oh yeah, what is it about high fives that delights me? The high fives from strangers, or what is it about nicknames? Like I never thought about this. Like something, and then boom, I'm thinking hard for 30 seconds and we'll see where it goes.
Yeah.
If it gets somewhere, all right. If not, it's just like a draft and it was, you know, didn't turn into anything. But never did I know. None of the ones that I liked did I know where I was going. Any ones that I knew where I was going, they didn't make it because they were boring, you know?
Yeah. That's the best. That's like when you have a really good day painting and you hope, I always look for the next day when I go in, you know, that feels like, oh, somebody else was here.
Yes.
You know, like, yes. Yeah, I remember you read the airline one with the tomato, and then you read a carrot one. But so when it came to the book of poetry, Beholding, what could you share with us about that, or would you read something?
like drama.
Look at your little printing press behind you.
Yeah, that's a little.
Letterpress?
Yeah, that's a little Nolan, and this is an old little Bandicoot.
Wow. And this is in your home?
This is right in my studio. I have a little studio that I can be in by myself.
Oh, is this the storefront?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, you know it.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So yeah, this book, it's
Can you hold the cover up?
oh yeah. So
Yeah,
that's,
that's a beauty.
and that is you know, there without getting way too into it, this is a book, you know, the sort of frame of the book is it's about looking, it's all about looking, but it's also about violence and racism and flight and the imagination. And it's a book actually that, you know, I officially started writing the words to this poem in 2015, April of 2015. But it's actually part of the book part of the book I was working on at Vermont Studio Center when I was there for that month. Yeah, back in 2014. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I was working on a book there that kind of fell apart, but parts of that book came into this book. And that book was actually a kind of novel. This book, I'll just read like the first couple pages.
Okay.
And basically what I'm doing is describing this move by Dr. J.
Right.
And it's a famous layup where he, you know, kind of like, he goes from under the backboard, it flies, he kind of jumps and he goes behind the backboard. He's defended by a guy named Mark Landsberger and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, one of the best players ever in the history of the NBA. And he makes this impossible shot. It's an impossible shot. And, you know, people make impossible shots, but this might be the most impossible shot. And so in a way, that's the whole frame of the book. I'm talking about this 2.5 second basketball move for, you know, however many pages this is. Okay. Beholding. You might have noticed there's nowhere to go. The wind cutting little eddies at your collarbones and behind your ear. As Dr. J drives from the foul line extended to the baseline, defended valiantly by Mark Landsberger, who, in this poem, despite the doofy urge to make him so, is not allegorical, but is rather simply a hard-working journeyman ball player with decent athleticism and size, and a floppy mop of dusty blonde hair got caught up in the gust, sliding his size 16s quick so that Doc, after catching the ball at the elbow and taking one hard dribble toward the baseline, where the dunk would usually commence, could not access the paint, or the lane, or the key, which is what we call the area nearest the goal, which in this case is an iron hole drawn in space, and therefore implies a window, though the key makes it also a door that Landsberger, it seemed, was trying to keep shut. And so Doc leapt. He left his feet, which means more or less jumping with the ball with nowhere to go, and which we're warned against by coaches from day one for the ensuing requisite stupid pass, or more simply, though no less stupid, travel, also called walking, which the leaping often leads to. Keep your feet again and again, which makes the leaving your feet, sound sacrificial. The way in certain places, certain countries, or countries inside of countries, you must leave by foot with nowhere to go, which there is. And Doc, you should note, after the one dribble, clasps the ball with only his right hand, without once at all in any shape or form using the left, which, among other things, friends, differentiates this move from all the descendant moves. Kevin Durant, Dwayne Wade, Steph, and Giannis, and Harden, and Kawhi. Yes, Bron too, I shall not be moved. And using only one hand, which is amazing, but not yet miraculous, more a physical and therefore genetic fact, thanks Ma and Pa Irving, Doc's hand becomes an octopus, gripping the ball, nothing like prey, and with that ball snug in his mitt, Doc maybe kind of sort of thought something like, I am going to put this schmuck, the schmuck in this case being Landsberger, though do not please revert to a simplistic allegorization of the journeyman, which word I repeat advisedly. on a poster, though schmuck is a word I'd be surprised to hear Doc say. And the word posterize, common usage, posterize his ass, you might be thinking is a bit of an anachronism in this poem, in this move, which ostensibly occurred in the 1980 NBA Finals, though we all know that nothing happens only when it happens. We all know nothing happens only when it happens. That's a story.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Wow.
Yeah. So that move, actually, the Dr. J move, it happened like my brother sent me a link that that move actually happened 40 years ago, like last week.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. 1980.
Wow. How are you dealing without being able to shoot hoops?
Yeah,
That's a ritual for you.
I know it is. You know, a buddy of mine and I are writing these a student of mine, another collaboration. We're writing these collaborative essays, these letter essays back and forth to each other. And we've been doing that for a couple years. And we're writing them we play basketball like 2 or 3 times a week. And so usually each time we play, we come with an essay. So one time it'll be Noah's turn, and then next time it's my turn. They've become like a bunch of essays, and they're sweet, they're nice. But I had a very intense, beautiful basketball game with this kid that is no more. But it's funny, right before we talked, I was writing an essay to him, because we're still writing the essays and, just trying to think about it.
So you write part of it and then hand it off to him, and then he can edit it out or add to it?
Well, it's more like I'll write an essay to him, and then he writes it to me. So they're like letters. They're epistles.
Okay,
yeah.
Nice. And how long has that been going on?
I guess it's probably been going on for like 2 years. Yeah. So there's a chunk of these essays going back and forth. And I mean, talk about touch. Like we play hard,
Yeah.
We were really, really with each other a lot.
So do you have access to a private court? I mean, I know like in some places courts are off limit.
Yeah, same here. Yeah, they're kind of, they have like a bar over the rims. Yeah, but I'll be out in the garage and I'll dribble the ball. Like I'll swing kettlebells and then I'll dribble the ball.
Okay, great. That's good. That's good.
Are the trees coming out there?
Oh, it's green. I love it at the very beginning when the green starts to pop and you get the lavenders and grays. And, and then I'm talking to the kids and I tell them to go look for it that day. I've tried to look for, in all this pain, the good stuff.
Yeah.
So that's one beautiful joy that I really enjoy, the month of May and all the greens developed. And, of course, they've all creeped into my artwork.
I was going to ask. Yeah. So is that?
Well, this one started.
Oh, beautiful.
I was obsessed with the dandelions.
Oh.
All that yellow. For me, it's just about making a mark and just don't stop. I did want to ask now, the Book of Delights came out before the pandemic. And how have you discovered delights, or have they surprised you now that we're here? And also, I read the beautiful piece you wrote that came out May 18th in the New York Times.
Oh, cool.
Joy.
Oh, yeah.
Will you read that one for us?
Yeah.
But I was going to say you had to answer the question, or that kind of answered it.
That does kind of answer.
That kind of answers it,
That thing, what you're saying is like, even when you're talking about witnessing the green and the colors in a certain kind of way, and which in itself is like something to attend to be like, yes, that is beautiful. And then, but also the fact that you're like to these kids, like, make sure you go see the beautiful thing. Make you see what this beauty that is happening. That feels crucial. And it's like, that's the question, like in the midst of, the question of being a human being, like in the midst of the sorrow, in the midst of distance, how do we maintain closeness? How do we do care better, obviously?
Right.
Yeah, but I love that. I love when you said that, I had a little reverie of like thinking of you like telling the kids, look for the purple.
Wow, talking about having to be creative during this time,
Yeah.
So I was listening to the Ninth Street Women, which is a really thick book. I don't know if you're aware of it. I mean, how am I ever going to get through that? So I started listening to it. There, Lee Krasner was talking about, she kind of paraphrased what Hans Hoffman was saying, and I'm going to look at my notes here. He was saying the artist's responsibility to society is to preserve, nurture, and glorify the human spirit. That's our job
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
artists. Because you are writing, when I will let you read that beautiful piece of what's happening now. The other question was just about your gardening. How's that going?
Good. It's we're gardening a lot at home, so seeing the changes more up close, being
Yeah.
around and stuff. But we're also, which feels really lucky, we're also gardening with this little collective of people that we're sharing the produce. We're gardening, and then we're sharing the produce with the local pantries, and it's just been really beautiful to be with folks, working together, growing food, sharing.
It's your connection.
It's a connection. Yeah. It's a connection. Yeah.
So have you been, like, the poem that you're going to read, or wait, or is it an essayette? The one in the New York Times.
Yeah. I love that you called it a poem, because it feels a little bit more like a poem in a certain kind of way.
Well, I will let you read that piece.
A month or so back, at the beginning of mask wearing out here, I was taking a walk and a friend pulled up in her little Toyota pickup truck. We chatted a bit from a distance. We usually hug. So many friends, so many beloveds we no longer touch. That touching being one of the ways we know each other, a sensorium bereft, and let us figure out how to mourn this properly. And then she told me she was on her way to drop off some masks she'd made for her nephew, who's about my age, at the jail. Here's an extra, she said, holding a mask out the window where it dangled from her finger. It was pretty, kind of floral and quilty and homemade as hell. I reached toward the mask, toward my friend, trying to keep away from her at the same time. Both of us a little bit nervous, a little bit scared, never before noticed scared and sacred so close, making that by now familiar, I hope we are not infecting each other face. That gesture, and the thousands of such gestures these past several weeks I have been a partner in the dance of, the clumsy and beautiful and awkward and elegant and nervous and tender figuring out how to reach toward while staying away dance, the reaching toward despite, the million gestures that carry all the figuring it out, all the wondering how to be close without touching, which is also to say how to be together in our sorrow, how to be together in our need for one another, which is profound and good, for each other's touch, really, how to hold one another in these forms and labors of care, some of which we've always kind of done, some of which are emergent, we are inventing, and they are becoming, to me anyway, differently luminous these days of need. Forms and modes of care utterly quotidian and utterly novel, though care is never quotidian. Forms and modes minuscule and grand, though care is never minuscule. Forms and modes and acts and events of care that become practices of care and structures of care. Witnessing this, studying this, trying to join this, the light that radiates from the dreaming and need and labor, despite the sorrow, in the midst of the sorrow, with the sorrow, brings me to what is there always, if sometimes I forget. And I do. And when it takes me in, I often nearly weep. I feel something breaking a little bit inside. And I think this is joy.
Oh, that was so sweet. I love them both. They're like the cutest together. Wasn't that great? And now for Daniel Cease in the field.
Pink flowers. Some bellflowers. Ding dong ding dong ding. Ding ding ding. There's actually a dinging happening. What else is here? Nothing. Time for winter again. Bye!
That was great. Thanks, Daniel. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in today, 6 Feet Apart. Don't forget, happy Pride, everyone. See you next week or whenever. Bye.